All over Britain, there are archaeological sites that are too dangerous to access or excavate. They could contain unique and valuable evidence of our past, which, if not investigated, will be lost forever. EXA is a team of highly skilled archaeologists. Katie Hurst, in charge of excavation. Alice Roberts, doctor and expert in human bones. Meg Waters, geophysicist and digital imaging specialist. All experts in their chosen fields who are determined to get into these inhospitable places to forensically assess, survey and extract the evidence. The expedition leader will be me, Mark Davis, volcanologist, climber, caver and diver. This is Archaeology on the very edge. This week we're in mysterious Tintagel to discover if this was a royal citadel trading with the Mediterranean during the Dark Ages. This is Tintagel Castle, perched high above the Atlantic on the North Cornish coast. Myths and legends surround this mysterious headland, with tales of King Arthur and Merlin that have gripped generations. Surprisingly, little is known for certain about these 11 acres of rock. Tintagel still has many secrets to reveal. We've been asked here to solve an archaeological mystery before the evidence is lost forever.
Pieces of pottery like this have recently been found here. Now, we know it's not local, and it also predates this castle by about 700 years. All the evidence points towards Tintagel being occupied during the Dark Ages, and it seems whoever lived here may have had trading links with the rest of the world.
Most of the pottery found has come from as far away as the Mediterranean, which raises a number of questions.
How important was this site? Could it have been a stronghold for the ancient kings of Cornwall? And was there a major trading route between Tintagel and the Mediterranean?
We're hoping to find signs of a large settlement, built at the end of the Roman period, and a jetty from where goods such as oil, spices and wine reached Tintagel. It's going to be a difficult mission. Katie and Alice will be excavating on the edge of the cliff. Meg will have to use all her geophysical skills to uncover the extent of any settlement on a steep slope. We've been invited here by Professor Charles Thomas, who has spent the last 30 years studying and investigating Tintagel. He's got his own theories about what went on here.
Most of what you can see here are the remains of a medieval castle, dates from the 1230s, built by Earl Richard of Cornwall.
Was there anything before that?
Oh yes, there was. The real interest here lies much further back. There was some activity here in the late Roman period, say 350 to 400. We're not quite certain what. Yeah. And then we go on perhaps 50 years, and from about 450 AD for the next 2.5 centuries, all the evidence here suggests that this was a major site, the whole of the island, 11 acres of it, with most exciting things going on.
What do you mean by that?
Archaeologists would normally describe it as a high-status site or an elite settlement, but I'm going to be blunt and say the only possible explanation is this is a royal settlement. This is a citadel for the kings of southwest Britain.
Other historians are less certain about Charles's royal citadel theory. It is one that plays well into the hands of those that believe Tintagel is intrinsically linked to King Arthur. It's a theory we'll have to put to the test. Even though Tintagel is a scheduled ancient monument, surprisingly, only 6% of this massive rock has ever been excavated. We target in 3 areas. 150 feet above the beach, soil slippage has exposed possible archaeology. Down by the Iron Gate rocks is where Charles believes a jetty existed for the importation of exotic goods during the 5th and 6th centuries. On the other side of the headland is the South Terrace, an untouched area of Tintagel that could reveal the extent of the settlement during the Dark Ages. But it's not going to be easy. Tintagel takes the full force of the Atlantic weather and has constant slippages and rockfalls. Our first job is at the top of the headland. The excavation site just happens to be hanging hundreds of feet above the rocks.
Are you going to do a bit of digging as well?
I think I should get a little bit involved.
Got an extra trowel.
The team is getting ready in the 13th century castle. Their target is hidden from public view over the edge on the cliff face.
I think the best thing for me to do now is to go down with you and have a look and see where the best place is to put our trench, because it's actually really unstable down there and we don't want to make it any worse.
Okay.
So if we can go in there now and get it before it slips down, that's the ideal thing. We should look up. Go down. Apparently it's absolutely jumping.
This is the first time archaeologists have investigated this area of slippage.
We should look up pottery as well, because it should be absolutely jam-packed full of the stuff. In the grass and on the top of the soil as well. Just keep your eye out. Oh my god. It didn't look so bad on all the maps, but it's really steep, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
This is where it's already slipped down, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah.
And is it you would be working?
The area we are targeting was exposed in 1918, when part of the cliff fell onto the beach. The rubble contained 52 sherds of pottery from Greece, Turkey and North Africa, dating from the end of the Roman Empire. Archaeologists believe Tintagel was artificially terraced in the 5th and 6th centuries. The land would have been levelled to make more room for buildings, so as to make the citadel easier to defend. Tintagel could have been a city on a rock, but over the last 1500 years, the buildings have collapsed or been redeveloped.
Burnt.
The cliff face Katie and Bean are on is probably spoiled from the construction of the 13th century castle.
This section here is great. It's like a ready-made surface for us to have a look on. It's absolutely jam-packed. You can see the
So there's
pottery is
loads of
there.
stuff.
This is great.
Over on the South Terrace, Meg has a big job ahead of her. A brush fire in 1983 burnt away the grass, revealing what looked like the outlines of 14 buildings. They were assumed to be Norman and associated with the castle, but opinion is now changing. Today there's nothing to be seen, but Meg's going to survey the slope and look for the extent of the settlement.
It's a pretty steep slope that we're looking at right here, and if there wasn't about a 100-foot drop to the ocean, I could probably just scramble on it, but it could get a little dangerous, and sometimes with the equipment, it weighs you down a bit and can trip you up. So I think we're gonna have the delivery team tie on some ropes. We'll be harnessed in and can just go ahead and scan.
Any work we do is vital to understanding what happened here during the period I've always called the Dark Ages, but it's now referred to as early medieval.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9-ish.
Meg's working under difficult conditions, surveying over 3,500 square metres on a 35-degree slope with a sheer drop off the edge into the sea. On the other side of the headland, Katie's finished her initial examination of the site.
Convince me it's worth going down there.
Well, there's a fantastic section down there. It's about that deep, and we can see lots of bit of pottery all over the place. There's slate, worked slate with holes in it.
Oh, fantastic. Can I come and join you?
Hang on.
It does feel pretty unstable underfoot, doesn't it?
Yeah, watch out behind you because it's really crumbly. This is where we're going to be working here. You step down.
Down there?
Yeah, if you step down below the section.
Is there anything I shouldn't be stepping on, Katie?
Katie and Alice are perched precariously on the edge of a cliff at Tintagel, looking for clues that can tell us what was going on here during the 5th and 6th centuries. They work in 150 feet above the beach and are the first archaeologists to excavate this area of slippage. Before they can start digging, they've got to clear the slope.
So we got one team working on the north of the headland on a very, very steep slope, so they roped in. Now on the south side, we've got Meg and Trevor.
Meg is looking for the extent of any buildings on the South Terrace. If we date them back to the 5th and 6th centuries, we could be looking at a much bigger Dark Age settlement than archaeologists believe existed.
So what are you using then? What's this?
I'm using a resistivity meter. We're actually measuring the amount of resistance to an electrical current that we induce into the ground. And the system actually has 2 probes down here, and then I have 2 more probes that are called remote probes off on the other side of my grids.
Right.
And what we do is we induce a current into the ground.
How far is it going into the ground then? How far down can you see?
It's going about 50 centimeters.
Is that enough to see the structures?
I believe that is enough to see the structure, if there is structure in here, because I honestly think that the topsoil is probably about 6 inches, maybe 10 inches max.
Sure. How far down are you going to go on the slope then?
Well, what we're trying to do is actually go all the way down to the edge, because we want to see if any and everything that's on this slope.
Right.
And then when we actually look at the data, we may do some other geophysics as well, depending on what this looks like. Hopefully we'll be able to excavate somewhere and actually look, because there's no excavation that's been done over here.
First, we need to find any structures, excavate and get dates. But we've only been given permission to dig a single 2 metre by 1 metre trench, so Meg will need to be accurate with her results. Katie and Alice are clearing the north side of the headland, but excavating while hanging off a rope is proving awkward.
Glad to hear it.
They are 150 feet above the beach, and dropping anything could seriously injure someone below. So all their tools need to be roped and secured.
It's very dusty, isn't it? I know. Getting loads of bits in your eyes.
Katie still has to record the site accurately, even under these difficult conditions. They are going to cut a step into the side of the cliff to get a clear picture of the layers that have built up over the last 1500 years. This analysis of layers could give us a chronology of the site.
What's that?
Just looking at all sorts of things that are different.
Yeah, that looks good. I'm not a pottery expert, but that's probably medieval.
Yeah.
Because we're on a high level.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't look really modern, does it?
I think that, you see how slatey it's getting now?
Yeah.
I think this is a different layer now. So,
Yeah.
An hour into the dig, and we've got our first, albeit small, find.
We've only got done about 10 centimetres so far, and the main problem that we've got is just getting the spoil out, and we need an efficient system with the buckets. Cause
The problem is we've got matters,
etc.
etc. So we've got buckets, and it's just like it's really fiddly working in a really
does
tight
bleed.
space.
We need a relay system because
Yeah.
we've got so much equipment down there with us. It's
Yeah.
fine, we just need a relay system because we didn't realise just how much mud that we need to shift.
I mean, is it in situ or is it spoils that's come down the slope? Because there's a lot of slips along
Yeah, no,
this
it's
area.
definitely in situ. You can see the layers in the section.
What we really want is evidence from the 5th and 6th centuries. And that means Alice and Katie have to hang off those ropes a little longer.
The finds aren't spectacular at the moment. We're getting a lot of roof slate from the 13th century castles, just tons of slate. You can see it's probably, all the roof has probably just collapsed and slid down here. And little bits of pottery.
Down by the Iron Gate rocks, Charles wants to show me a flat rock face, which he believes was the berth for unloading goods in the 5th and 6th centuries. But that's not his only evidence to prove his ancient jetty theory.
I normally go down my arse.
Good girl. Yeah.
Get round there, you can see it.
Well, it's obviously man-made, isn't it?
It's a square rock-cut socket. It's about a foot across in both ways. It's just in the solid rock.
Right.
I think
we'll have a look.
Let's see how deep it is. Can you put your hand?
Yeah, I get the great job.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's the bedrock down there.
That's the bedrock.
So it's quite deep. Yeah. Well, it's shaped actually,
It
isn't
is.
it? Yeah. So what was it used for?
Our guess is that you'd have a jib.
Right.
Like a simple jib crane, which could revolve around the upper part of the post. This is a device for unloading a boat.
So almost like a gantry to unload from
You could
the boat.
unload.
So when was this put in place then, Charles?
You've got two alternatives. One is that it belongs to the Iron Gate here, the medieval defence. It would therefore be 13th century.
Yeah.
The other one, which I rather tend to favour, this belongs to the 5th and 6th century.
And why do you think that?
Because if this is the place where all the cargoes of Mediterranean amphorae were unloaded,
Okay.
you're getting a lot of these. We've got hundreds of the things up here. The easiest way to get them ashore is to swing out and bring in the net full, bring it here, and then you take it out. If that's so, this would make this the earliest wharf in post-Roman Britain.
That would be fantastic
I know.
if we could conclusively prove that this was put in place in the 5th and 6th century.
You're the geologist, you tell me.
Was this rock the best place for a jetty? I think we'll need a more thorough investigation. What we do know is the pottery from Turkey and North Africa must have got onto Tintagel somehow. Katie and Alice are below the castle looking for more of these imported wares.
Kate, is that pottery?
It's
Got lines on it.
you can see the lines.
Oh yeah,
And they've worked it on a wheel.
excellent.
Ooh, this looks interesting.
Oh wow. It's pottery again, isn't it?
It is pottery.
But it's got a pattern on the outside.
And I've just got a feeling that might be some of the stuff we're looking for.
That looks like Mediterranean pottery to you.
From what I know, it is possibly, yeah.
It's not just small finds. We're starting to get down onto something more substantial.
It looks like we've gone through the slate layer now, and we're just starting to hit some big stones. And I'm just beginning to wonder whether they're part of the structure. Because this slope wouldn't have been a slope. I mean, especially in the 5th and 6th centuries, this would have been part of a terrace, and much flatter. So you would expect structures.
If Katie's right, this could be our first evidence of a post-Roman settlement. Around the corner from Charles's potential jetty, he's got more evidence that could back up his theory.
About 10 years ago, we came round the corner here and noticed there seemed to be these rock-cut steps which come down here. This is the complete mystery.
This is the dead giveaway for me of why these are man-made. There's no fracture that they followed.
No,
There's none
absolutely
whatsoever.
clear.
They've cut their way into the rock itself. So that is perfectly man-made. But I can't for the life of me understand why they come down to here, because it's not going anywhere really.
We're into guesswork. We don't know the answer. We go round the corner onto this sloping shelf, and here's this very large natural cave here. It's full of water at the bottom.
Yeah.
At some stage, somebody's going to have to go in there and see if there's anything around. But it would appear that the steps begin from this platform and then go right up to the top again.
I mean, it's not like the other place over there. It's not a wharf. It's not a natural wharf. I mean,
we have
can't
no
see
evidence for the date here.
Yeah.
None at all. Complete mystery.
With the rock-cut steps, socket holes, and a flat rock face, does this really point to a jetty in operation during the 5th and 6th centuries? We need to get a closer look above and below the waterline before we can answer that question. Alice and Katie have found over 15 fragments of pottery in their trench. They joined by Carl, Thorpe and Charles Together, they are the only archaeologists to have handled and identified every single piece of pottery found on Tintagel.
What are you talking about? Well, this is 6th century.
It's definitely.
Yes, it's a type of amphora, a very large jar, standing about 1 metre high in some cases. Comes from probably somewhere in the eastern Mediterranean, presumably for liquid, since they're liquid containers. Good Lord. Well, this is the rim of what we call a Phocian red slipware bowl. This comes from Asia Minor, what is now Turkey. The shape is about that, comes down to a base with a little foot.
And what is exciting about these vessels is that from excavations in Carthage and elsewhere in the Mediterranean, we can actually give a very specific date for these, because the forms change so almost every 10, 15, maybe 20 years.
So what's the date of this?
I'm not sure. I believe that this particular form is around about sort of 525.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
You can be that specific about
Yes,
it. It's amazing.
Yeah, because
It's very early as well, isn't it?
Because in Carthage, in that they're actually dated using Roman coins and other coinage that is known to continue in existence. So
And
we've got
presumably
the
the
form.
patterns change over time.
Yes, they
as well.
do.
Yeah.
It's a sort of fashion in pots, really.
Just like hemlines in the 20th century.
Yeah, exactly that. So this is actually the most exciting piece so far, in that it's the most specific one we can actually date.
We've
So
got
that's
other
one thing.
pieces
Oh,
like
no,
this.
this is more like it.
Oh, you sound quite excited.
If we look at this, you can see the lines. They look as if they're made with a comb.
Yeah.
They've not. They've been made with a stylus. This is absolutely characteristic of a certain sort of amphora. These are rather handsome things, about 1.5 feet high, 30, 40 centimetres. 2 little stubby handles, round bottom, neck. Wine jars come from the East Mediterranean. They come from Rhodes, Chios, the Dodecanese, the Greek islands.
The pottery we found has come from all over the Mediterranean, from the Greek islands and even as far east as Turkey. Although the Romans left Britain in the 5th century, it seems that trading routes they established continue to be used. But was there a royal citadel on Tintagel trading directly with these countries?
Meg's had all day to work on the south terrace, so I want to see if she's made any progress. Meg, you finished the resistivity survey?
Hey, yes, we did.
Yeah? What did you find?
Today. Well, we found a couple of interesting looking features, straight lines basically.
Straight lines of what?
We don't know what it is.
Why don't you know what it is?
Well, because it's only information that we have based on certain values, and I can't look at it. It's not square, it's not a circle. So, but it is a straight line.
Yeah.
And it's just up here. We're actually in a smaller grid now with radar. And another thing with the geophysics data is what we know of the structures on the other side. They put a layer of clay down as a base, the people who lived here, and then they put field stone, like this kind of stone, just a layer on top of it, one single layer of stone, and then on top of that they actually build turf walls. So it's not a nice rock wall foundation or trench and pit.
Well, are you wasting your time
foundation.
here then?
We're not wasting. See, I don't think with the geophysics we really don't waste our time if the techniques are actually working.
Yeah.
Right? Resistivity works. It's collecting data, even if it's geological or kind of rocks that are around. The radar is definitely working.
That's fine, but unless you actually identify an area where we can open up a trench, okay, your time across here has been worthless.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
You hate me.
Whatever you need.
Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Let me get back to work then.
Maybe I was a bit hard on her. The straight lines Meg found could be the buildings that we're looking for. The surface of the trench on the north side of the headland is scattered with pottery. Even Mike, from our delivery team, is finding fragments.
It's actually the base of an amphora. You see it comes up like that, wiggles up like that. So it's really rather nice. I don't know what age it is though, we'll have to get Carl to have a look at it.
Could all this imported pottery mean we're beginning to uncover signs of a large 6th century settlement?
Quite impressed.
We're in Tintagel on the north Cornish coast. Katie and Alice have been hanging 150 feet high above the beach, trying to reveal some of Tintagel's dark age secrets. They've already found over 20 pieces of 5th and 6th century Mediterranean pottery. But how did it get here? Could Tintagel have one of the earliest jetties in Britain? Meg's on the South Terrace, where a brush fire in the 1980s revealed what looked like buildings. Archaeologists believe they could be early medieval, but that theory is changing. Could this have been part of a much larger 5th and 6th century settlement? Meg's looking for more buildings, but she's not having an easy time of it. She's covering a huge area, and it's quite literally an uphill struggle.
We're just setting up one more partial grid to collect on. And I hope within another hour to have some data, some results, and figure out a place where we can excavate.
The Mediterranean pottery we found must have got to Tintagel somehow. And the country's foremost expert on the site, Charles Thomas, believes there was a jetty down by the Iron Gate. Earlier, he showed me a socket hole that he believes housed a crane to unload goods.
Well, the idea was to sample this socket to prove that it was 5th and 6th century. But I've taken another look, and you can see in all four corners of the socket, there are drill marks, a sure sign of the Industrial Revolution.
Mechanical drills capable of cutting rock in this way weren't even invented until the 19th century. To get evidence of 5th and 6th century, we need to examine the rocks on the seaward side. The only way to do that is to coast steer, climbing on the rock face just above the waterline.
What we're searching for is kind of evidence of this face being worked. So chisel marks, grooves, anything, whatever you find, just give us a shout so we can have a look at it.
We've only just splashed in, and we've already spotted something.
Is that an iron bar? Is it? Yeah. That's not quite what we're looking for, though, is it?
No.
An iron bar like that.
A little bit recent, perhaps.
Yeah. We want evidence of the 5th and 6th century, that's the thing. That doesn't give it to us.
All the evidence, to me at least, is looking as if the iron post and socket hole point to the slate mining industry in the 19th century. But there's no documentary evidence to prove it for this rock.
Splash down. Now try and get your arms quite straight though, Mike, if you're going to stay on. 2 down, 1 to go. The good thing about the coast steering things, when you are climbing around, if you do fall in, it really doesn't matter, you just splash down and go again.
Everything we can see so far looks natural. No tool marks or any sign of human intervention. Earlier, Charles showed me steps cut into the rock that led to the mouth of the cave, and then descend into the sea. Could they have led to the docking point for boats in the Dark Ages, or were they used later in the 19th century? There's no sign of steps in the cave. It's all natural, slimy and slippery. So we have to get wet again. With the constant tidal action, any evidence could have been washed or worn away by now. The only way to find evidence that the Iron Gate rocks were used as a trading jetty in the 5th and 6th century is to look at the rock face and the seabed underwater. Alice is 150 feet above us in the trench on the cliff face. She's working with our field archaeologist Jim, who is helping plan and record the trench. They're having a final hunt around for more pottery. They've dug down past the 5th and 6th century layers onto a sterile layer in the trench, so they are now ready to close it. But Alice has one more piece of evidence for Carl.
These are the sections that I drew earlier, which I knew you wanted to have a look at. And this is at the back of the trench, and this is on the left-hand side as you're sort of in the trench, looking over to the left.
This is absolutely fantastic because I believe that to be the edge of the artificial terrace which was done in the 5th and 6th centuries.
Really?
What we've got here is a line of slate slabs on top of which a turf wall would have been built. You could actually see the line of the actual slates protruding out from the section, which is fantastic.
Carry on, yeah.
So it does carry on along the cliff edge, and this suggests that certainly the lower terrace you found is right at the centre, at the heart of whatever post-Roman activity there was here. This is the main part, and you found some structural evidence, and that's fantastic.
That's great.
We've revealed a wall supporting the artificially created terrace. How big was it during the 5th and 6th centuries?
Well, I'm just having a last look at this sterile layer at the bottom of our trench here. We came down through about 3 or 4 different contexts. We've recorded them, we've photographed them, drawn them, done the whole works. We're about to reconstitute this as part of the agreement with English Heritage. We're making sure it's all safe, it's not going to fall down, and I'm really just having a little bit of a poke around. In fact, you can probably see there's just a little bit of pottery left in the section there. But I think I'll leave him there for the next archaeologist to find, if anyone else does come down here on a rope.
Alice has taken the investigation of the size of the early settlement on Tintagel a step further.
I had a chat to Carl this morning, and the bit of terracing that we found yesterday when we were excavating the trench seems to be continuing along the cliff, and I'm going to climb down the cliff face and see whether I can actually see whether there's any sort of evidence of a wall there or not. The reason for having all this gear is obviously so I can film with the camera up here, but the great thing about it is that they've actually got a live link down to the dome, so when I'm going down there, Charles will be able to have a look at exactly what I'm seeing on the side of the cliff. Looks like a long way.
I think it's about 120 foot. We've got a nice little grassy ledge below us, and then it goes, this section that Alice actually wants to check out, it goes quite
Pretty steep, isn't it?
Yeah. Come on, you've done this plenty of times before.
Okay.
There's nothing to worry about. Happy?
Yeah. Okay, Mark, we're on our way down.
There she goes. Once she's actually going, it's quite a rapid procedure.
It is going to be quite sort of friable, and we'll just start dropping off.
You know, all these bands of rock, this sort of rock is, you know, we'd never climb on this kind of rock.
Really?
It's just too fragile. You just don't know whether it's going to hold or not.
Alice, where you are now, where you were looking right now is the area that Charles wants you to search. Over.
Just up there?
Up there and down to the right, the seaward side.
This area?
You see, Alice, do you have anything there in the section which looks at all like walling or stones placed on top of each other as where you were digging?
This doesn't actually look like stone to me. This just looks like
natural, doesn't it?
Pretty natural stuff that's wearing away. And it's wearing away in ridges that do look a bit wall-like. From a distance, probably, but this all looks natural, Charles.
But you're now more or less at the level of the wall that you were digging earlier.
Right.
And you can't see anything there that could be a terrace.
I can't see anything that looks anything like what we were looking at yesterday.
No.
It really just does look like sort of natural layers of slate.
From my experience as a rock climber, this is definitely, you know, natural rock.
Yeah. Charles, we're just going to go a little bit further this way where there's some vegetation, and it looks as though it's a bit flatter there.
We can see an interesting looking stone.
Just there?
Yes, that's it, that's it. What is that?
Mike, can we go up a little bit further? That's a huge stone. Yeah.
And it's slate, not greenstone.
Well, it looks totally different from the slatey stuff that we've been looking at.
And it's got soil underneath it,
It's
hasn't
probably
it?
been... Yeah, it is lying on soil. It's not part of the cliff face. What is it, Mike?
Yeah, it's a type of sandstone of some kind, Mark. It's definitely not slate.
What does it mean if we've got a stone that's out of place there?
I'm not sure. I would have thought that it's not likely to have come from the 13th century hall, which is either slate-walled or has these greenstone coins, but they're all shaped. Can you estimate roughly how wide it is horizontally?
Yeah.
1'6", 2 feet?
Can you see my arm across it?
Yes, we can. Your arm is about 15 inches, so we're looking at something at least 2 feet across, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yes, at least 2 feet.
That's not likely to have fallen there. It's been placed there. It may have been the other way up, may have been that way up. But
Yeah.
I would think this is a major component of the terrace, the end of which you were excavating.
Excellent.
And it's at the right level.
There's certainly nothing as big as that in the walls above
no,
either,
no.
so it looks totally different from those later walls.
No, I think on that score you have won. You were not dropped in vain.
Brilliant.
And the importance of this is, I mean, there's no hope of digging this kind of thing. You can only ever get at this by lowering somebody off the edge of a cliff.
Sure.
We've got a positive ID on the terrace. It goes all the way around the headland, which is great for us because it says that the citadel was much bigger than we first envisaged. Could it have housed the Cornish king? Could be. Meg's on the south terrace looking for signs of a settlement or possible citadel. Her results will tell us where we should open the first ever trench on the slope. On the other side of the headland, we are still looking for evidence of how pottery got to Tintagel. We've no proof of a jetty, but this time we're going to look underwater. Tintagel is finally starting to yield some of its secrets. We've looked for evidence of a jetty dating back to the Dark Ages, but have found nothing above the sea. I think it's worth one more look. This time, Katie's searching underwater.
So Charles, presumably this would be the natural harbour?
We think so. You've got a big wharf. It's a natural wharf against which you could have boats, which would be tied up here at all times.
How big are these boats then coming in?
We're talking of Mediterranean trading galleys. We're talking of something in modern terms 60 feet. And the question is, if a boat is coming here directly, where would it tie up? Where would it anchor? This is the only place in the haven here which resembles anything like a wharf.
How deep is the water? Do we know how deep it is at this point? Because it's an equinox tide at the moment, so it's very low water.
We'll know when we push Katie in. But it is, except that if we're going back to 500 AD, 1500 years, the water would be about 3 meters lower than it is today.
So what sort of things am I going to be looking for down there?
Well, there are 3 things. The first is, as we've said already, this seems to be a natural vertical face. Has it been improved lower down? We've never been able to see this. Has it been quarried away? Have stones been removed? The second thing is, and we're looking down there now and we can see through the water, it appears to be a sandy bottom. Well, this haven isn't all the sandy bottom. There's rock, there's seaweed, there's all that kind of thing. Is there a patch down here which has been deliberately cleared? The third most interesting thing is, are there any stone anchors, for example? We just don't know what's down there. Nobody's ever looked.
Katie is being guided by marine archaeologist Mark Lawrence.
Katie, Mark, this is Mark Davis. What's the conditions like down there, over?
Well, we're getting, there's a fair amount of surge. We're getting sort of thrown from one side to the other, but it's not too bad, is it, Katie?
It's not, the visibility's not too bad, but we're getting buffeted around quite vigorously, even though it's quite calm on the surface. So even when it's calm, you can imagine that any pottery or any small artifacts down here would be ground up pretty fast.
Katie and Mark have carried out an initial search of the area and are making their way over to the base of the rock where Charles Thomas believes ancient boats from the Mediterranean unloaded their cargo.
If they were using this as a landing stage, they're bound to have had the odd accident every now and then, dropped things overboard, or even had a complete shipwreck.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be much in the way of activity or finds that we can see.
The problem is that there's been so much action by the sea, hasn't there? It's really churned up the bottom.
Mark Davis to Katie, over.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Katie. Can you see anything interesting yet?
Well, we're not finding anything at all, unfortunately. We're having a look at the surface of the wall, but it looks like there's too much growth on it for us to possibly see whether it's been altered. But just on the surface, it doesn't look as though there's been any alterations at all. Same on the seabed. We've had a look for any rounded stones that might be anchor stones, as Charles described, but really not having any luck at all. I think your theory may be right that some of the stones have been cleared away from this area for these large ships to come in, because there's really, I can't see any rocks around here at all.
Okay, how are you feeling, Katie?
I'm really cold now and I've got very little air left. I'm down to 80 bar. So I really want to come back up. I'm absolutely freezing.
Okay, we got that. We'll see you back up on the surface then, over.
Okay.
We haven't found any pottery or anchors, but the rock face is pretty flat down to the seabed, so it's true boats could have docked close to the rocks. But without hard evidence, the Dark Age jetty theory has to remain just a theory. Meg's finished her survey of the South Terrace. She's been looking for the extent of the settlement on the slope. She's carried out a resistivity scan and a ground-penetrating radar survey, and now it's time to decide where to dig a trench to get dating evidence.
This first image is just to locate where we are. This is actually the south slope right here. This bit of a flat area, which we can zoom into just a little bit. There. This is an aerial photograph looking straight down on the South Terrace. And you can see I've overlaid the resistivity data here. And it looks really funny. It looks like we surveyed 20 meters out into the sea, but in fact, the slope is so steep. If we actually match the data directly onto the slope, which we've done in another image, you can see that we actually did go 60 meters, but downhill, right to the cliff edge.
Almost vertically.
Pretty vertical.
Yeah, so why would you build a structure?
Well, there are some
like
terraces out there. When I went back yesterday with the radar, I noticed that there's actually rocks sticking out of the ground up here.
You see, that's what those big black blobs could be as well. They could just be
the bedrock,
natural rocks
coming to the surface. And Mark, what I was going to ask was this type of feature that I see here and this line over here, these two lines are parallel, which would suggest perhaps boundary walls or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because what you got to bear in mind is you're so close to the bedrock that you might be the data might be contaminated by the bedrock, but there's no geological trend that will give you this kind of a V shape that's sitting in there, resistivity.
What would be a V shape?
The only way to resolve this is to dig a trench. It's our last day on Tintagel, and for the first time ever, a trench is being opened on the slopes of the South Terrace. Meg's survey shows possible buildings, but with limited time and resources, and for minimum disturbance, we're opening a trench where Charles believes there is definitely a structure. Experts have always believed the buildings on the South Terrace to be part of the medieval castle. If we date them to the 5th and 6th century, it would make the Dark Age settlement bigger than had ever been envisaged.
Yes, that's pottery.
And? Looks old to me.
That looks Romano-British.
Is it?
Yeah.
Romano-British?
Yep. We'll have to wait till it's washed, but certainly that black core, the red outside, that looks more like the native ware that was being used at the same time as the imported ware, so it could be 5th, 6th century. Native ware is the first piece of Cornish-made pottery that's been found in this current excavation.
It's a great start, but we can't prove the scale of the settlement by pottery evidence alone. But it does seem to support Charles's theory that there was once a royal citadel here.
So was it worthwhile or not?
It's been absolutely fantastic. Look what we've got. We've got the front wall of this building.
This is a front wall of a building.
Of a building. So that's on the outside, and this is all the inside.
Are these flagstones, the base?
Well, it's
of the house,
very
or?
difficult to tell. What we've done so far is worked our way down through all the rubble collapse. When the building has collapsed, it's created loads of bits of slate, all higgledy-piggledy.
See a good example of in this
it's all
face over here.
Different angles.
Back and forth, yeah.
But we have got down to much flatter ones. They may be a floor surface, but we're just going to clean this up a bit more.
Right.
But even better is just that we have dating evidence here in the form
Smiling, you don't often smile, Kate. You must be good.
pottery. And this is all 5th and 6th century. Imported Mediterranean.
How do you know that then?
Carl's had a look at it.
Carl's identified
But
it,
even
right?
stranger, this is Romano-British. You can see this black stuff. It's all handmade pottery.
So what is this black stuff?
It's just the way it's been fired in the kiln.
Right, okay.
So we've got even earlier dating evidence.
Okay.
But I mean, this is just absolutely fantastic because this is the first time anyone has been on this South Terrace. And before, everybody thought these were medieval buildings.
This is the first time anyone's ever discovered anything on the South Terrace.
Yeah, and we've proven that at least some of these buildings are 5th and 6th century.
We now know the settlement on the South Terrace is much earlier than had originally been thought. We've also been able to show that it did not extend further down the slope. The discovery of a substantial terrace on the north of the headland points to Tintagel being a high-status settlement during the Dark Ages. Unfortunately, we've no evidence it was a royal citadel, and we've definitely found no proof that King Arthur lived here or even existed. During our brief dig, we found 61 pieces of 5th and 6th century imported pottery, most of it from the Greek islands, North Africa and Turkey. Unfortunately, we found no evidence of an ancient jetty where the goods came in, nor any proof of outgoing trade. But overall, it's been a successful rescue mission. We've saved valuable archaeology before it slipped from the cliff and was lost forever.
We've learnt a lot. We've seen things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to see because normal archaeologists, ordinary people like me, don't go over the edge of cliffs, they don't go into caves where there might be anything lurking, and they don't normally dig on the kind of place where we have to be roped in.
Okay. What about the South Terrace?
The South Terrace is tremendously important. We've always known from the surveys there are at least 14 structures there. We haven't any idea of their date at all. Now we know that it appears to be a post-Roman site. We've got the walling, we've got the corner of the walling, we've got the relevant pottery. This is a tremendous step forward. We'll have to rethink what happened there. And I hope one day that can be expanded into a full-scale excavation.
Yeah.
But, I mean, thanks to your effort, in a mere afternoon, we now have what appears to be the answer to that.
Great. Well, that's good. And again, it sort of points towards a much bigger settlement.
It does indeed.